Hey, everybody, and welcome once again to the Fart Fetish Podcast. It's that podcast where we seek to find the answers to the what, where, how, and sometimes why of fart fetish, and try to help give a nuanced picture of the people that have fetishes. I'm your host, Raj. Watch for new episodes every first Friday of the month on fartfetishpodcast.com, as well as most major podcast platforms. And if you're into erotic fart content, you can support the show by checking out the ad-supported erotic fart content on thefartcloset.com. And now I'd like to introduce Trent to the podcast. Trent is a 20-year-old heterosexual man who openly shares about how his fart fetish developed through a mix of imagination, creative exploration, and early life experiences. He talks about his preferences for face-sitting, clothing-covered farts, and the role of devotion and worship in shaping his fantasies. Trent also reflects on the challenges of being a virgin while having a rich fantasy life, how childhood embarrassments influenced his desires, and the ways porn and art expanded his understanding of kink. Together we explore shame, secrecy, and the hope for a future where fetishes can be seen with empathy and nuance. Let's get right into the Fart Fetish Podcast. Trent, thanks very much for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, including what does fetish and sexuality look like for you?
Hello everyone. My name is Trent. I am a 20-year-old heterosexual male, so I am attracted to women. Um, so the fart fetish and what it looks like for me. First of all, I'm attracted to women farting, obviously, and it has to be, a woman that I already find sexually attractive in the first place. Um, in terms of how I enjoy the fetish, there's like a couple main things that like check boxes that I prefer to be checked. First of all, I'm a guy who likes closed farts. I don't particularly like uh seeing the human anus. I just don't find it very appealing. So you know, like a pair of panties or like shorts or jeans or anything like that. I prefer the anus to be fully if it's a type of like fart content or art that I'm looking at, I prefer the woman's ass to like actually be in view. So if it's like not actually in the frame, it could still work, but it's not going to get me going as much. I do like kind of the ass aspect of the fetish. Um, Beyond that, in terms of like scenarios, like whether that be like femdom or like kind of like ass worship or just a girl, you know, farting on camera, it really kind of comes down to just my mood on that day. It's kind of just a different thing every day. It's like today, am I in the mood for just watching a girl fart on camera or like actual like face sitting sort of deal or whatever. So beyond those like kind of main principles, it's just kind of whatever I'm feeling.
Nice, nice, very cool. That's very illustrative of what you're talking about. When you think about all the things you mentioned, worship, femdom, even just like a girlfriend experience, I guess, type farting. Um, do you have like a prime like fantasy or like I usually ask this as like aspects, themes, scenarios. You kind of filled that in, but do you have like uh a main fantasy that you gravitate towards, or something that is your uh primary enjoyment?
Yeah. As I said, there's a lot of different scenarios I could partake in and that I do just enjoy kind of depending on the day. Um Mainly so just to give a little context, my main uh kind of fetish, if we're just talking about a particular fetish, it's just kind of like face sitting or like just in general, just putting my face in a nice ass, you know, just kind of that in general. And you could say farting is just kind of like a cherry on top of the cake, or, you know, it could be its own thing. But in general, if we're talking about, you know, fantasy stuff, it's mainly going to be a woman like actually sitting on my face and farting. Um, if we want to get more particular in terms of like role play aspects, so in terms of content I watch, you know, I like femdom related stuff and things of that sort. But uh, if we're gonna get really specific, I kind of just I kind of like the idea of, you know, there's certain like videos and stuff where like the sub, whether that be a male or female sub, you know, both work for me. Um, there are videos where they struggle a lot. They're like kicking and flailing. They're obviously really objecting to it. That that doesn't really I could still indulge in that content every now and then, but I don't I don't particularly like that. I like kind of the aspect of sort of like kind of like giving in, just kind of like that idea of, oh man, I kind of don't really want this, but she's too strong, or there's just something there where you're kind of just like giving up, or uh sort of deal where you kind of like actually just enjoy it. Um so I don't think in that scenario where like a woman is sitting on my face and farting, I don't know if there's like a specific way I would prefer her to act or like treat me in that scenario. Maybe like the occasional like teasing words or something, but like in general, like as long as she's not maybe going too hard into like the degradation kind of stuff like that, it's just like the occasional passing comment or just kind of sitting there, like that's really all I need, I would say.
Nice. Nice. That definitely gives a picture. I mean, I'm certainly more on the degrading angle side. Though I do understand what you're saying as well about like giving in. Like there's a mixture for me, there's a mixture of like being degraded but also being helpless, I guess, for this for as far as the sub goes. Is a bit of a different thing than what you're talking about, but in the same vein. I guess it's all a spectrum. Um, do you have any kinks that you consider related or unrelated to this fetish? Do you like mix things together? What do you think about when you think of other fetishes for yourself or other kinks even?
Well, so in terms of farting or face sitting, there's not really I don't really think of any other fetishes that go along with those specifically. Because like if we're talking about that, you usually see like maybe there's some sort of like bondage thrown in, or you know, there's other things you can throw in there. But I do have I do have a lot of other things. I meant to mention that at the start, but I forgot. I have a lot of other things I'm interested in, and they all are kind of unified under this under like a certain idea. Um yeah, some other things are like um let me pull up my let me pull this up real quick. Um a lot of them are like kind of like fantasy sort of related, like kind of just watching it sort of deal. But like there's things like maybe you've heard of hypnosis or brainwash. Do you know about like that kind of fetish?
Not a lot, but I do know it exists. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of like these images of like maybe like a woman's ass or something to that effect. Or like there's even like this kind of subgenre of it, literally just called titnosis, you know, where it's just like like a kind of like a spiral centered around it, and there's like a caption. I've kind of like, you know, been into that. Um, there's like you've talked about on the podcast before, like maybe when you were younger, or maybe this is still sort of a thing where it's like kind of the idea of like death being thrown into the mix. There's another thing very, very fantastical in nature still, but kind of like life drain or like energy drain, where it's kind of like the idea of a hero and he has to like save the world or whatever, but they're like these kind of like tempting sort of villainesses, and they kind of have like this power of like like draining their energy or their life, and they could do it in like certain ways, like maybe they do it through like kissing or just like straight up vanilla sex, but like kind of that idea. And it all kind of um is unified under that same idea of like you could say just like femdom, like female dominating, which I think, that is a genre. So and it's a genre I heavily, gravitate towards. So I think that would be accurate. But it's kind of this idea of like having such a great lust for like this woman, or like a woman that you find attractive, that it almost like breaks past this barrier of embarrassment. Like you're doing things that's kind of like humiliating, like, oh, getting farted on by a woman, or like her stepping on your face. It's like all these things you could kind of consider to be degrading, or like an act of dominance, but like your lust kind of like pushing past that barrier to where instead of being like embarrassed or like wanting it to stop, it's like actually kind of enjoying it, because like maybe because like she's enjoying it in like a sort of way. So it's kind of all of my other kinks, you could say, are kind of uh under this sort of mantle of like a woman just being so hot that like you don't even care, like these things are objectively like degrading, but it's like she's so hot that like you can kind of push past those boundaries.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I won't speak for you, but that sounds in some ways like the elements of entering a dominant and submissive dynamic. I'm certainly exploring some elements of that with someone I'm with right now, and that's like stuff like pet play in quiet but public nighttime type stuff. So things that are ostensibly humiliating, I suppose. I mean, I look at all as I have a hard time being humiliated. I think it's because I'm an actor, so it's like, well, who cares if I'm in my underwear and take my shirt off and I'm on my knees and whatever, on a dock. For me, it's just like, I'm an actor. Who the fuck cares? Like, it doesn't really matter if anyone sees me like this. And I don't say that like, oh, I could pass it off, but like, it's just not important to me that I think humiliation seems to matter if you have something to lose. And like I don't feel like I have anything to lose. I work for myself. I, like I say, the actor thing, I don't really have a high embarrassment quotient. In some way, doing this podcast, I think it's all there's an attention aspect to all of it of like, hey, look at me. I'm doing this. I'm Raj the actor doing a podcast now. Look at my media project. Do you like me now, guys, or
Yeah.
whatever? you know so yeah, I think I get that in terms of like um it's serving the dominant, doing something that is maybe you don't even enjoy or what have you. Not like I don't say don't enjoy like it's a limit, but don't enjoy like, maybe I don't want to suck nipple for like 30 minutes or so. Like it's not really doing anything for me, but if it pleases her, then why not? There's nothing that doesn't harm me either, and doesn't humiliate me in that instance either. Um, but that does tie into something I wanted to ask you about, and you mentioned the worship aspect. You didn't use the word devotion. That's kind of the more like it's still DS adjacent. Just on like I take it more the degrading angle. Devotion is another take of it. Being just such a good submissive. Um, what do you think draws you to those themes of like worship and devotion, for instance?
Um, there's there's like a couple theories I kind of have about that. Um, I guess I'll just lay this one out there. So I said earlier that I'm 20, but what I didn't say is that I am a virgin. I have not had a sexual experience. I have not had any sort of like real life experience with any of these kinks or like anything vanilla. Um, that kind of aspect of devotion, I kind of wonder if it's like sort of a thing where it's like I've had these thoughts for so long, and it's like I've also I also feel like I kind of hit puberty a little bit early. I have a lot of memories of people of like being online and people thinking my voice was really deep for my age and things like that. Um, and just having interests sort of early on. So I wonder if it's the kind of thing where like I've just had these uh feelings for so long and they haven't been met that it almost kind of really gets the fantasies going because it's like not having a real experience to tether it to. It's just like, ooh, what about we don't even know what that feels like, but ooh, what about like, like the other aspects of a woman? What about the armpits? What about the feet? Or just like things like that. And like maybe that doesn't exactly tie into devotion or a thing like that, but I guess I'm really attracted to the idea of like that devotion almost being like chivalrous in a sense. And I know that sounds maybe kind of strange because it's like what's so honorable about sniffing a woman's farts, but it's like it's kind of the thing of like it kind of making her happy and you being devoted to her, so you kind of do these things. But I think like another theory that I kind of have is just simply being a creative mind. Like like to me, it sounds like you like creative like art forms and stuff. You talked about like music, how you like music, and obviously you're like an actor and producer, so that's a very uh those are very creative oriented things. I'm the same way. So like all my life I've been really interested in like creative writing. I've written a lot of like songs, not like actual songs that were like put on the radio, but just like kind of like a hobbyist sort of deal of like writing my own songs. I had like a bit of a poetry phase, and I've just been interested in a lot of I just really love like music and stuff like that, video games. So I wonder if that kind of like boundless imagination kind of extends to sexual interest because it's like if your imagination is so broad that it's like, ooh, you're exploring like magic and like fantasy creatures, why not like also expand your sexual interest? Like, okay, instead of just boobs and butts, what about, like belly buttons, or like more, or just like the best example is probably just feet. Like feet and armpits. I feel like those are probably the best examples. Um, I do have like a story that I've heard before that I think uh really kind of encapsulates it. But like, do you have any thoughts on what I've said so far?
I certainly do. I mean, a lot of thoughts, but like, let me see if I could jump around. Um, well, one of them, for instance, like that, I agree with you on the sense of devotion. I think the difference between, and we have this coming up too, but the difference sometimes between fantasy and reality of devotion is the partner you're with. Like the person I'm seeing currently, they're well aware of the fetish and the podcast, but they don't really have interest in that direction. They may have similar interests. Maybe they're going to sit on my face in more of a pussy focused region, rather than an ass focused, and like other aspects of play I mentioned, such as pet play and nipple sucking and what have you. Um, so it really comes down to alignment. That's not just like, I do feel like there's a reality that a lot of us may not have the fortune to connect with another fart fetishist who enjoys that as an aspect of devotion. And you know I guess keep everyone should keep that in mind. Like, don't throw away something good maybe just because it doesn't have the fetish, if it feels fulfilling in other ways. If it's not, then I'm not saying hold out for it, but or I'm not saying hold on to it just because it feels good in the moment, and but you're not fulfilled. But I think there is a reality to that aspect, especially in terms of like, I want to focus on what the woman wants. Well, I think there's a lot of women that don't consider fart sniffing or what have you a aspect of devotion. I will also say, like, I agree with you 100% with the curiosities around fetish. I mean, that's what led me to trying golden showers and realizing it's like, you know what, I think I want to be only peed on but not peed in, because that is just not tasty. um
Yeah.
and as I've heard, it's something that is, it can be acclimated to, can be, what do you call it, trained through slow process, but yeah, I don't know if I'm that interested. But again, very sexy to think about. Very sexy to add it into like a play element of like even being sat on and then degraded in such a way that you're just not not valued, but not thought of, not considered, as that uh, worthy. But I also do think uh partly there's fantasy in there. I think doing that and then not having proper aftercare for that would also be a little psychologically not wise to do. A little psychologically like bad to like get pissed on, especially in such a degrading, or farted on for that matter, in such a degrading way, and then not um get kind of the confirmations and affirmations that, yay, you're a worthy person, yada yada yada, etc. Not to diminish that, but just to move on. But yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on a lot of what you say. But yeah, please continue with what you were going to say.
Yeah. And I do want to throw some confirmation at the whole devotion thing, because perhaps I didn't explain it the best, or I explained it in a way that maybe wasn't ideal looking back. Um, it doesn't the Dom doesn't necessarily have to be like enjoying it, or like it to work. Maybe that's like one facet of it. But there's other sort of things around it where it's like, I think I think a better way of putting it is like, even if she's like not enjoying it, like let's take like, maybe it's like a woman farting and she feels like really kind of like embarrassed about it. Like, oh God, that was stinky. That was gross. My boyfriend, like maybe she's like dating someone and like he's in the room and she's like, "Oh God, he's gonna think I'm gross." And like instead of like instead of like being grossed out or leaving the room, he's actually like, "Wow, that was actually kind of hot." So it's like I think a better way of putting it and how I should have put it is like the devotion in a sense that like even though she's doing something that's like a little bit like unclean or maybe unladylike, you're still kind of there for her and like even her perfections are like even her imperfections are kind of worth falling head over heels for. I feel like that was a much better way of going about it and it
Gotcha.
and it leads into this. Yeah, does that make more sense?
Sure. Yeah,
Or-
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I put that more in the girlfriend experience type thing, but yeah, I get exactly what you mean.
all right, cool. I just wanted to clear that up.
Sure.
But no, like the other thing I said about like, oh, maybe it's like flipped around where like, oh, the woman enjoys farting on your face, but you're not really into it. But you love her, so it's like you're kind of like that kind of like fantasy scenario I think could also work. But there's a lot of different sort of ways it can be experienced. There's a lot of dynamics. But so this story that I have to tell, I believe it was a story that was like on Reddit or something. I don't exactly remember uh where I heard it. And there's going to be a lot of paraphrasing here because it's like it's been a bit, but this is how I remember it. So like picture this. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. Couple is like sleeping in bed. And eventually the woman wakes up first and she like stretches or whatever and then she's like, "Wait a minute, something's off." She looks down and she realizes that she bled the bed. She's on her period. Now she gets immediately very flustered and embarrassed, and she's like, "Oh my God, oh my God." So she goes to the bathroom and she's like kind of handling her business or whatever, and she's like really sad or really scared, like the point of tears, because it's like, "Oh my God, my boyfriend is gonna wake up and he's gonna see that blood stain on the bed and he's just gonna think I'm so gross or whatever." After, a period of time, doing that and kind of sitting with those thoughts, she's eventually like, "Okay, I can't just stay in this bathroom for the rest of the day. I gotta go back and I gotta like apologize." Now she goes back to the room. She's like expecting, you know, him to be like grossed out or something like that. But instead, he's just like calmly, taking off the sheets and like putting it in a laundry basket. And maybe he like goes to the laundry room and starts like washing stuff, putting it in there. And he is completely unbothered by it. He's not like in this specific story, he's not like turned on by it or anything like that. He's literally just like, "I am not going to make you feel humiliated. I'm not going to let this small hiccup, you know, uh, fracture." That's a weird word to use, but I'm not going to let it affect my love for you. And it's kind of, and obviously the woman in this case, in this story, is like very appreciative of that. It's like her expectations get subverted where she's like immediately felt really embarrassed, but her boyfriend's there to kind of be like, "Hey, like it's all right. It happens." And I think that's a big part of the fantasy, just appreciating the sort of imperfections or just kind of really I just find it really romantic. Like if you were to ask like the normal like not the norm, the average person, like what is your most give me like the most romantic scenario you can think of. They're probably going to be like, oh, two like a couple just sitting on the grass in the middle of the night looking at the stars, and it's kind of like this scenario where like everything is like beautiful. Oh, everything is so picturesque. But I would actually say more so that story that I just told, because it's not picturesque. It's a situation where that quote unquote idea of like a perfect woman is being challenged, but your genuine love for her surpasses those things. It's so great that it's like I don't care if she farts, I don't care if she accidentally wets the bed or whatever. I don't care if she burps at a restaurant. Like I don't give a shit because I love her. And I feel like for me that's like the I don't know if it's the pinnacle of romance, but for me I feel like it's up there. I feel like that's incredibly romantic and beautiful. So yeah, that's the story.
Interesting. That's great. That's really interesting. I mean, I do feel like that should be kind of the norm of life. But I think it's a two-way street. I think one, um women especially can be more reserved about those aspects, even if they're quote unquote uncontrollable. They work their very hardest to control them so they're not in that situation. And on the other side, unfortunately, I think a lot of men have not risen to the occasion in terms of being able to be good partners and show their love for someone even in their in a time that's very negative for them or very embarrassing for them. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's great.
Yeah. And in our talk before, you in one of our like previous talks, not episodes, just like EMs or whatever.
Mhm.
You mentioned that I should watch the Zara episode. And I actually did watch that a little bit. And I was just kind of surprised at like how like she would like fart around her boyfriend or whatever, and he would be like very kind of discouraging of it and stuff like that. So I was just like, man, that's like really unfortunate that it almost kind of gives off, maybe shallowness is a little bit harsh or whatever, but it's kind of like I look at that and it's like, damn, over something so small, you're like really judging her. Like maybe if it's in like a really public place or something like that, or but like, I was just kind of like, damn, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it speaks really to the. I mean, I think a lot of us would be very like, oh my god, we're dying for a partner like that. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a reality that uh, I think for some it may go back to embarrassment, like, oh, I don't want a partner who farts. What does that mean about me? What does that say about me? And that's a really selfish opinion, first of all. But yeah, I think some people just can't. They are so programmed and rigid into paradigms and what is quote unquote right that they miss life. They miss humans. They and that's kind of like every episode of this show. I know I sound sometimes preachy, but it's kind of these things, these thoughts people have trigger these ideas, these idealistic ideas I view humanity towards, of like, well, if if you love someone, then that's your partner. You're accepting of all of them and whatever. Like, there's aspects that may come a butt against that, like, oh, maybe there's cheating or maybe there's something else that's more I don't know, damaging, I suppose, to trust in the relationship. But like aspects of humanity, farting, pissing, whatever, like I think to live in a world where that's a one-way street, or even like, oh, we don't do that or whatever, like people, especially, once you get to a certain age, you got to confront these things, at least in my opinion. You got to start looking at, like, what does any of this mean? Like, I think I have a heavy advantage because I look at this whole world and I'm like, I could throw it all away tomorrow. I don't fucking like any of this. I don't like capitalism. I don't like the working for money aspects. I don't like the way people treat each other. Like, I am ready. If Alien Portal opens up tomorrow, I'm ready to jump in because this world sucks. But here's the thing: is a lot of people just don't feel that way. It's like they're in it. They're in the cycle. They're in the zeitgeist or whatever the hell. Like they're either succeeding or winning, and they never had to question their life. So they're just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna do things normal. We're gonna get married and we're gonna have kids, and I'm gonna get the good job, and I'm gonna blah 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 blah. It's like, if you're living your life as check boxes, I don't think you're living life at all. That's my opinion. Some people, I'm sure, would disagree because many people are living checkbox lives. Oh, those lives, uh, lives. Getting back to the fetish specifically, how and maybe about when did you become aware of this fetish for yourself, or even, to be honest, any of these kind of odd, and I say odd in a loving way, of being different than what other people seem to like or enjoy about relationships and the opposite sex and what have you.
Um, so I don't necessarily have like any like defining moments. I think I've been interested. So like the first thing that really came about, I think, was face sitting. That's been kind of my main go-to ever since I, you know, even started feeling sexual feelings, maybe, for all I know. But uh I'd say ever since, I don't know, it probably started around when I was like 13, 14, maybe like a little bit earlier. Uh I don't exactly remember it all too well. Uh in terms of like yeah, like I just don't really have that. I mean, in terms of like origins of like maybe why I'm kind of into farts specifically, I can really only think of like one thing, and it wasn't even something I remembered until like I was just thinking about this like the other day, like in preparation for this podcast. Like, where the hell could this have even come from? Or is it really just, does it really just have to do with my kind of main sexual interest of like kind of devotion and like the things like we talked about before. Um and a lot of people on the show have talked about like Total Drama Island, or like other shows like that. For me, I don't know if any of them mentioned Johnny Test. That's really the closest thing I can think of. Johnny Test was like I believe it was a Cartoon Network show. It was like this fucking male kid, but like uh and it was basically the show where like he was kind of like a superhero, and there was like a talking dog, but he also had like these two, I believe they were his sisters. They were like scientists, and they would kind of like give him his powers and stuff. Uh but there was a lot of fart humor in that show. And it kind of went, I guess you could say, it kind of went down in history as one of those shows where it's like, oh, we have to have 500 sound effects every single second. It's like kind of one of those shows, like incredibly wacky, really like kind of kid humor type of stuff. But I seem to remember a scene where they had like super farts, and like him and his dog and like both of his sisters like all use those powers to like take down a villain or whatever. And I don't know, maybe his sisters doing that was kind of a thing because they were like mature, they were like adults, and like I do remember finding them somewhat attractive. But like and I do believe that was, I think that was before I had fantasies. But other than that, I really do feel like it's just, kind of the absence of sexual experiences, and just my, like, I've just always had such a big imagination, and it just kind of just let it kind of grow to this point where it expanded to my sexual interests. And it's just like, oh, now I like face sitting. Oh, now I like farts. And it's just all this other stuff like I mentioned like hypnosis and the things with like, life drain. That was not that was like more recent stuff. I've probably only been into that stuff for like a couple of years, and like those definitely don't have like a defining moment. I think I probably just like stumbled on it uh through watching porn. And actually, if you don't mind me skipping ahead a bit, uh you did mention, I believe one of the questions uh you had was like uh shit, I forgot. Is there anything you want to say about the stuff that I've said so far?
Um, no, I mean that's pretty clear. Like I get you and I understand. Like a lot of people it happens so young. It's difficult to um pinpoint. I think I have the it's fortune and misfortune of one of my earliest memories being associated with a wasn't in the moment, but a later trauma that makes that fantasy stick out really heavily. Unrelated, but yeah, like for me, like I knew it was very early on, and it started with like aspects of like it was more farting and domination in general. It wasn't face sitting. I don't know if I ever mentioned it on the show or not, but I think my fantasy was well in first grade was like giants, male giants by the way, their asses like busting through the walls of the classroom and
Yeah, I
like which
remember the story. You talked
yeah,
about it.
so yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I don't need to go into it. Although maybe I will. No, but the point is like um yeah, for me it's so vivid and it's so even from such an early age. Like I can picture things like the classroom and this and that, but like I'm not like putting together whole fucking memories about me in first grade. But that moment sticks out pretty strongly. There's only a couple fantasies from my early years that stick out like that. I think it's that one, and then there's one during puberty. But I think it is especially though because they're tied to. I definitely don't think I ever said this on the podcast. I um, probably for good reason, but I wasn't very well nurtured. Which I have said, I'm sure. But one of those aspects was my parents really didn't tell me what was normal to do, what was right to do, or whatever. So I actually was a person who was maybe I did talk about this because I think I remember Jules responding to it. But anyways, I was a person who um unfortunately I masturbated in class until like junior high. And I didn't get any fallback or what do you call it, backlash for that until junior high. And it wasn't teacher backlash. It was unfortunately a friend of mine, and I think a lot of that and they kind of like humiliated me, not publicly or largely, but I was humiliated and you know in their presence. So I think that set me back a lot in terms of my whatever. But anyways, the whole reason I was mentioning this was yeah, I think those specific traumas make the memories stick out really strongly because there's so much tied to that moment for me, so much shame, I suppose, um in that moment. So so yeah, there's that aspect, you know.
Yeah. Um, so I did uh well actually first to kind of respond what you
Sure.
said about like the traumas or whatever. Um, in terms of stuff like public humiliation and things like that, I do have very vivid memories of like stuff like that. So like when I was really young, there were like these two guys, and it's like, oh, they were the guys that like the girls always chased around on the playground. Like they were like those guys. And I remember kind of trying to integrate myself into that group, and the girls weren't having it. And one would like there was this one in particular, she would like almost like reel back her leg, almost as if she's about to like kick me in the balls. Like that kind of thing. And like there's like a later memory of just like me doing something, saying something embarrassing that I didn't even mean to be embarrassing, and then like literally the entire class like pointing and laughing at me for it. And it's like when I think about these things, it's like it is interesting how it's like really psychologically kind of damaging, but like you know, our it's almost like our sexual interests can kind of like evolve as like some sort of like coping mechanism for it. It's like, oh, we can't cope with this pain. Let's turn it into something sexual. Then it's just that now it's like we've just turned it from like the most undesirable thing ever to like almost semi desirable. And it's kind of like, even if, you know, a fetish has like some unfortunate or like you could say negative origins, I don't think that should necessarily um affect the validity of it, but it is kind of a thing that's like, damn, it is kind of weird to think about how some of these things might not come from uh the best places.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's not that uncommon. I don't think every kink has to be trauma informed, but I think a lot of kinks are trauma informed for many people, and not just ours, but I think throughout the BDSM and kink community, I think it's very common, and I think it's probably healthy to take a trauma like that, and I mean I don't even think it's automatic. I don't think we're like consciously like, oh, here's the trauma, let me attach this wire over here to processing,
Yeah.
and our brain's doing that by itself. We can't even necessarily control it per se. But I think awareness is important because it will inform your play. That's why there's so much emphasis in BDSM on negotiation, because do you know your triggers? Is there something I shouldn't call you? Or if you do get triggered, what do I need to do to comfort you? And I don't say that in the like woke way of like, oh, triggered, but just like, someone might call you a bitch, and that might be your dad might have called you a bitch, and it really upsets you somehow. Like, it's very common. Obviously, a lot of people get called bitch, especially in like kink play, but like maybe that one for you is like, oh, that's too far. That one I can't do. So having this awareness of where this stuff comes from is very helpful. I agree. I would say, from my experience and discussion and thoughts, I think my fart fetish is and domination is very trauma informed as well. Between the family attitude around like farting and being natural in aspects, and then also like parental neglect and aspects like that. You kind of combine them together, and you get this kind of eager to please person, kind of likes this degrading aspect because he was neglected. It's like you could start putting the pieces together. There's no sense. There's no, I guess, in the way that this is a puzzle, there's a couple of different ways to put it together that still create a picture. We may never know the right picture, but we have an idea of what the picture looks like.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I I think some people have a perception of like, oh, you have a fetish. Well, I expect you to be able to, explain that. It's almost like a certain thing where they do believe that this is like something we like volunteered for, like we like when we were being, born. It's like, oh, would you like a fart fetish? And it's like we were like, yes, please give me that. It's like that's not. That's not how this works. It's really like automatic, and it's like, we have, like, obviously on, this podcast, you talk about things like where this could have possibly came from, but like, I don't think anyone really understands their own brain. There's a reason why therapy exists. There's a reason why, neuroscience is, a big important thing. It's because our brains are so, like, just because we have a thing doesn't mean we fully understand how it works. Like, I can move my arms around, but I don't know how the fuck I'm doing that. I could just do it. It's just innate. So it's like, it's a kind of that sort of deal. And yeah, you were also, kind of talking about like masturbating in class or whatever, and maybe not like facing much like pushback for things. I think maybe that was like also kind of a deal for me. I mean, I don't think I've ever done that. I do have a very vivid memory of me like flipping the bird under my table to like one of my teachers in like elementary school. No one ever caught me, but I was like, I felt like really, I was like, oh, I'm such a bad boy. Like, I don't know, but but I do think I had experiences like, just like, it is kind of the thing where like your fantasies can be as wild as you want them to be, and no one's gonna be like, hey, that's, you probably shouldn't be doing you probably shouldn't be thinking about your teacher in that way or things like that. But it's like, it's all internal, so like no one's gonna stop you. So I think that is an interesting part of that. But anyway, I did find that uh question that I was thinking of,
Mm.
and forgive me for just like basically asking myself a question that you made.
No, go
It's
for it.
just, it's just, yeah. The question is, what role has porn played in your sexual and or fetish development?
Mm.
This is that question really caught my eye, and I was thinking about it because like, oh, like my best guess is like, oh, Johnny Test or whatever, but I think it really caught my eye because I thought about it, and I feel like porn has played such a massive, massive role in my like sexuality and my fetishes and all that. It's like this. I feel like so many of them. It's just like I may not have even gotten into them if the content didn't exist. I feel like it's a sort of thing where like I really feel like I just stumbled upon like hypnosis captions or like tweet stuff or like yada yada, and it was just kind of like, you know what, I can get into this, and it was just kind of like that. It's like I didn't even really reach those things myself. It's just kind of like it was just put in front of me, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. It's just kind of like if hamburgers weren't a thing, you wouldn't you wouldn't know that you like them. It's like sort of that deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mean, it goes back to what you were talking about, like, in terms of experience as well. Like, I think porn gives us a skewed perspective on a lot of these things. I mean, skewed to the point where I, like, when I went to my first pro dom session, I was honestly concerned that they would not let me out. Like, obviously, once you realize this is commerce and basically you're paying for the time to be there, it starts to become very clear. But before all that, before I had done anything, before I'd entered the actual community, when I was basically just living off Tumblr and this vid and whatever, my own content as well, my own stories. Like, I had a serious belief that I would not be allowed out of the BDSM club or dungeon or what have you. So yeah, I agree with you 100% that porn definitely does paint picture. I mean, right, obviously you're not gonna show the starting of a dynamic, the whole like get on your knees, put on a collar, blah 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 blah. Like there's all this ritual and things that, for porn you just like, let's get to the masturbating. um so like it makes sense, but I agree. It is a skewed perspective, especially towards consent specifically. But yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. It kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about, in terms of something we've talked on the show before about like fantasy versus reality. And I think I listed vor as a great example of like that's not possible. You just can't do it. Maybe there's ways to simulate it, VR or something, but you can't be swallowed or eaten or what have you, and still be fine, still be a person. um but something that was interesting that you brought up as a third, I think it would be a third facet to this, would be like the difference between uh, something being enjoyed in like a drawn context, but not enjoyed in a like live action or a photographed video context. I can imagine something you mentioned earlier, such as not liking, or not gravitating towards anus, gravitating more towards clothes farts. That gives me kind of an illustration of what you're talking about. Can you like talk more about that and break down more examples for us of what you kind of put in each bucket for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the difference between like art and live action, you mentioned kind of a way like stuff that I would enjoy in art, but I wouldn't enjoy in live action. That
Mhm.
is that is definitely uh that is definitely a thing. One of the So like just for that, um I would say feet is a really good example of that for me. So like in drawn form, if it's like, like an anime woman or just like a character or anything like that, usually the feet are drawn like really clean and stuff like that. And I just kind of like real feet, there's like a lot of like wrinkles and stuff, and there's possible like hygienic related things like that. But just in drawn form, I find it a lot more appealing if like, when like the sub is like licking their feet or whatever, things like that. So I've never really sought out feet related stuff in like in on websites like, Pornhub or things like that, where it's a lot of like live action uh sort of stuff. But like just in general, art, and I'll give you some examples just like related to fart stuff too. Art just opens the door for so many different aspects to be added to these added to these things and whatnot. And like, yeah, you mentioned vor. That's a great example of something that can really only exist in fantasy. And it's like I already kind of talked about, like energy drain, that stuff. You know, Obviously I don't think there's women in real life that have that power. Um, so that's a thing. But like in terms of farts, right? So in real life, right? When someone farts, there's not really a visual element. Um, it's kind of just like there is a visual element, like if you see the anus, because you can kind of see it open and stuff like that. But I've already, obviously, already said I'm not really into that. Um, and there's also like, to a certain extent, you can really only abide by like your bodily limits. That is to say that like, oh, your farts are only going to last so long. You can only do it so often. There is a thing with like air pumps and things like that. But at the end of the day, you gotta have some sort of like editing magic or some sort of tools or maybe even a fucking crazy ass budget to like really, like you said, like simulate these things, so to speak. But when you go to like drawn stuff, there is like a big visual element with farts you can have. So like for example, just fart clouds. That's not a thing in real life, but like in cartoons, like I even mentioned Johnny Test, it's like you can kind of add this visual element of like these like stink lines or whatever, and it's like there's like different colors, so it's like usually like green or brown, and it can be like a thing where it kind of leaves this sort of filter on the frame, so it's like it's covering the whole room. It can be sort of like really concentrated on like the person's nose or whatever, and like it just adds like this element that could really like alter your enjoyment of it, because it's kind of like, wow, if it's like this visual element, it kind of paints this more like picturesque sort of deal. It almost makes it feel like really really real in a sense, but also like you don't have to abide by those bodily limits. Like the artist can make them fart as long as they wanted to. Like if it's an animated thing, like it could just go for fucking 30 seconds if they wanted it to. It could be like very like rapid. They could give it like uh like certain sounds or whatever. So it's just sort of a thing where like there's just so much that an art form could add or just create in its own right. There's just so much potential, and I find myself really drawn to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I agree with you 100% that art definitely opens up a lot of possibilities that just aren't nearly as feasible. I've certainly been exploring that. Hopefully, I don't get too much hate, but with like AI generated images and then like adding captions to them, as I have in the past. But now um, with the advent of AI and with the desire to not really infringe on other people's copyright, which I only heard about a few times, but in the interest of being cautious, yeah, I've enjoyed that aspect, and I agree that it does open up a lot of possibilities for I mean, whatever possible. Space CEO farting on a scientist subordinate or whatever, all kinds of random different things that you can come up with that you don't need to collect models and whatever to go shoot that, and maybe you can't even shoot it in a practical or budget friendly way. So yeah, fully agree with that aspect. Is there any part of your fetish or your sexuality that you feel like you struggle with or don't understand? And if so, why do you think that is?
Um, I feel like the only real thing I could say is like a struggle. Like the only real thing that I think fits that bill for me is just the fact that a lot of the stuff like face sitting or farting that could happen in real life, like I just simply haven't experienced. So there is like a sort of thing of like, what if it does happen? What if I get farted on and I'm actually like, oh God, this was like nothing what I expected, and I don't actually like this. And that's not really a doubt that I truly have. I really don't think that, but like in terms of like my confidence in like I don't feel really any shame for liking the things I do or stuff like that. But I guess I am concerned that like if it happened in real life, maybe I actually wouldn't really enjoy it. And I I guess there's also like an aspect of I have struggled with the question of like, oh, I'm into this like degrade like some sort of like I'm into these like quote unquote embarrassing things and stuff like that, and it's like, what does that say about me? And I think and I think I've kind of come to terms with that. It's just like, even though I might like, you know, like these certain videos where like the sub is kind of like being degraded, or it's just like these embarrassing things, or kind of like pet play stuff. You mentioned that actually a couple times. That was another thing on my list. I do kind of like those POV images of like you're kind of like on a collar, and like the woman is kind of like walking, or it's just kind of like pet play related stuff, and it's like, is this a result of me like having really low confidence, or does this make actually like kind of make me a lesser person? And I've kind of come to terms with like, yeah, even though I'm kind of into this stuff in this context, that's just kind of like my horny brain. As soon as I exit that, it's like we're back to, good old. And you could say that I have some. You could definitely say that I have some confidence issues and stuff, but it's I don't. It's not like I watch these things and I like take it personally, or I truly believe that I am worth as much as like a dog, or like, I don't truly feel that way about myself. It's just kind of this thing it's like a separate thing. So yeah, those are really the main two things I would say that I struggle with occasionally.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I think I mean, there's a couple of things I want to mention. First, practicality, but let me go back to that. Um, uh, yeah, I think there's a spectrum on pet play as well. I think there are people that do embody, like they embody an animal. They d- uh, put their mindset in that way. I think a lot of age players maybe do that as well. Um, like I look at pet play as just an aspect. It's something that someone I'm with likes, so I will do it. It's not I'm not like doing it begrudgingly. Um but it's not like arousing me. But that, I guess that comes back to practicality too, is sometimes you'll find that it's like it's hot, but you might not get aroused when someone's actually sitting on your face because it's also uncomfortable. It's painful, especially, if they're sitting full weight or what have you. Like there are practicalities in feeling these fetishes that be um will be telling, not in terms of your interests, but just in terms of like what is feasible, and maybe you'll react differently. But this is certainly something I've noticed, like being sat on or whatever and not necessarily getting aroused. And it's like, but I've been fantasizing about face sitting for 20, 30 something years. Like how am I not getting aroused when I'm being sat on? And I think the reality is it's just like it's different. Maybe for me, I'm more into the third person perspective. I want to see and craft the fantasy more than I want to feel it, because feeling it is discomfort. Feeling it is, it's hard to be like sexually excited and fantasizing when, someone's smelly ass is on your face. And again, I like smelly ass, but like, again, the practicality of it might manifest itself differently than you feel in the fantasy. And I don't necessarily think it could be an indication that you're not into it, but it also could just be an indication that this is just um it's discomforting to the body in a way that uh doesn't allow you to get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, a couple kinks that I have that like I whether I see in like live action porn or art form, it's like I there is kind of this sense of like, if it's like a dom and a sub, of kind of like not fully putting yourself in the sub's like position. It's kind of like seeing it happen in front of your eyes is like really hot. So it's like you're kind of like enjoying the action of it and seeing it kind of happen. But if it were to actually happen to you, it might be incredibly uncomfortable. Like the best example I could probably think of this is like chastity cages, which like you probably know what that is. People
Yep.
watching this probably knows what that is. Um, but basically it's like a mechanism they put on your PP and you can't get hard. Um, I I have looked up some chastity related stuff on websites or whatever, and it has worked for me, and I kind of like seeing that happen. I haven't used this word this podcast yet, but I do kind of like dehumanization aspects, for lack of a better term, in like femdom and stuff, where it's kind of like you start off as a human, but you're kind of gradually becoming like either like a puppet or like a shell of your former self or like to the level of like some sort of animal. And kind of that chastity stuff is it's kind of like that. It's kind of like really like teasy, and I I've kind of, you know, gotten into that maybe a little bit. But like real life, hell no. I would never ever ever do that in real life. I I had an experience where like I don't know, maybe I went too hard or maybe I you know maybe I was doing too much, but I had this sort of thing where like after I masturbated, I would I would like think about something that I find sexy or whatever, but I wasn't able to get hard. And that wasn't like a serious thing. It was like it resolved itself after like maybe a minute or two. But like in that moment, I wasn't worried that I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get hard again. But I was just kind of like it felt really strange and I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't get hard. It was really uncomfortable for me. So like I that's a thing where like, yep, that one's staying in fantasy. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, and I think chastity is definitely more done for the other person. Like I think there are certainly people who enjoy it more than others. But chastity, especially a chastity cage, is something you do for the other person's benefit, for the other person's enjoyment. It's a symbol of the arrangement for some. um yeah, I think there's chastity is a symbol of devotion. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a kink in itself, although for some I'm sure it is. But yeah, I do agree with you. Like I hear what you're saying there, in terms of being unappealing. But yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I do want to try something a bit different. I've done this on a couple different episodes now. None of them are out yet, but they will be. So it's called taboo tarot, and essentially I'm just going to pull a word and you can tell me what you feel about that word. It doesn't have to be it will be whatever you want, fantasy, whatever comes to mind for you. That is perfectly okay. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just what the word brings up for you. And the word I have is, um, kind of obvious, but secret. Your word is secret.
Fetish.
Yeah, I mean that's that. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, yeah, I mean that's kind of it. I do. I mean, I'll give you a moment if you want to think about anything else, but I agree. Yeah, secret is kind of
I was
that's the
half
fetish.
tempted. I was half tempted to just lead into the mic and be like, murder.
uh, yeah. Well, that was Taboo Tarot for this round. Thank you for playing. Um,
Woo!
are you Going back to the questions, are you or do you feel like you have a community you're part of as part of this fetish? Yeah, yeah. We'll start with there.
Um, I do not. It's something that I've never uh particularly sought out. I don't think I've ever really had the urge to like, man, like I really gotta find people who are also into this. I mean, I know that sounds kind of ironic because like I'm literally on a podcast where that
I was going to
but
say that
like
that must have changed at some point.
yeah, because like I I found this podcast and I was like, oh man, I it feels really cool seeing or like hearing other people who are also into this and that stuff. But I don't think it's necessarily ever been something where I needed someone to like kind of talk to, I guess until today. But I would still say it's something it's like, oh, like that'd be nice, but it's never something I was like, oh, I need this or whatever. And yeah, I don't really have a community. Um I I will say this. I feel like just the fact that there's content out there for this stuff and like with some like images or like videos or whatever, um, I'll see comments of like people being like, "Oh, this is hot" or whatever. I feel like um that was really that was really all I needed to be like, okay, there are other people out here that enjoy this. There are people who are making content for it. Uh I don't I don't gotta feel too bad about it. So um I I know this is like a um separate question, but I think I do have a story about like it's like have you ever like told anyone else about this fetish? I have. I told one other friend, but I can get into that if you like, or you could if you have some responses to what I said about the community.
I mean, no, I mean, it makes, I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm glad that that was enough for you to like see the community, existing and being like, oh, then I'm not so weird. Like, I think it should be, that simple. Not to say like anyone who needed community or whatever is weaker or whatever, but just like, um, it should be so simple, for all of us. I guess, or I wish it was so simple for all of us to like experience that type of acceptance or self acceptance, which makes sense. But no, please, please, I think my phrasing was like being public or private about the fetish. But if this is your instance of being the one time you shared and otherwise being private, that makes perfect sense to me. So yeah, please feel free.
Yeah. So I am not public about this any of my fetishes with my family or like in general, like my friends or whatever. Haven't haven't really told the soul. I think you are probably the second person to ever know, well, technically third, if I'm counting myself, to know that I feel these things. But yes, I did tell one of my friends before. I don't even know how it came up. I think he was talking about some sexual experiences or whatever, because I think there was a point in his life where he was having some doubts about certain things, and like I just kind of said like I'm kind of I don't even know if I straight up said it, but there was like one thing led to another, and he ended up asking like because I was kind of being vague about it, but then he ended up straight up asking like Trent, do you have a fart fetish? And I was like, yes. And it was kind of like that was kind of the whole ordeal there. And in terms of what it's been like since then, um, still like friends or whatever, things like that. He never like made me feel guilty or whatever, but we never really properly addressed it. I felt like he never really asked any questions about it, and it's like I know that sounds maybe on paper it's like wow, that sounds like really good. Like he just treats you like a normal person, and like yeah, that's great too. But there have been like what makes me kind of uncomfortable about it is that there have been instances where like in like public places or like if we're in a call with like another friend or whatever where like he almost like slips up or he almost like makes a joke like like somehow some way something about like face center or whatever will be thrown up, will be brought up and he'll kind of like almost spill the beans. It's not like a situation where it's like he'll pull me to the side afterwards and be like, "Hey, my bad," or anything like that. It'll just be kind of a thing where like he almost slips up and I just like kind of tense up because I'm like, so it's just kind of been a thing where it's like I almost kind of regret telling him that because it's like I've just had those have those spooks and it's like I'm not 100% confident in his ability to keep the secret, you know?
Yeah, for sure, sure. That sounds a bit fucked up. From my perspective, I mean, I don't know the exact situation, but yeah, it especially if it's something you guys didn't like feel like you talked about or had concluded the conversation. Yeah, that seems a bit fucked up. Like I've certainly told people and maybe we haven't hung out enough to run into this, but I definitely don't foresee them needing or having to bring up something like that. You know, outside of some kind of wild context. I was curious as you were talking if he is it um is it always pointed or clearly like in a direction of you, or is it possible like he's just saying this thing, or is it situations where he's just saying this thing and a person who didn't know any better could just attribute it to his interest?
No, it's pointed towards me in a way. Like
Got it.
I have this memory of like us being in the gym or something, we're playing badminton. Again, for the life of me, I can't remember the context of why it happened, but like but like he kind of like maybe like something regarding like face sitting or something was brought up and like I think he said like, "Oh, well," he looked at me, he was like, "Oh, well, you would have been into that, wouldn't you?" And I was kind of like, I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." And like, no, I don't think anyone expects anything or something like that, but it's kind of like almost bringing it up in a sense where it's like, "Bro, this was something I kind of shared with you because I really because yeah, I trust you and you kind of had like some doubts yourself that like maybe we helped each other through and now it's like I don't like these closed calls, man." And it could just be a thing where it's like really I'm just generally anxious or like I would much prefer like if someone's gonna know that I have this fetish, I would much prefer me to be the one to tell them as opposed to somebody else because I don't want them to misconstrue any misconstrue anything. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I kind of regret telling him because it's like I just tell him and now he just knows this personal information and it's like nothing was ever done of like actually like learning about it or actually being like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting, Trent. Tell me more about it." Or like just an affirmation that it's like, "Hey, bro, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. Don't worry about it." It's just absolutely nothing. I just kind of told him and it's like nothing really happened and now it's just this kind of thing where it's like, damn, it kind of just feels like it could it's very infrequent. I think of maybe like one or two, well, like two scenarios where like that scenario I kind of described and one that was more recent, but like it's not like something where like every time I'm hopping in a call with him, I'm scared that he's gonna bring it up. It's not like that, but it's just kind of like, damn, it's just like, I don't know. I just kind of wish I didn't. I just kind of wish I didn't tell him.
No, for sure, for sure. What came to mind, and I'm not trying to defend your friend. Again, I don't know enough context, but at best, I wonder if he's just trying to, how our friends often will joke with and at us in our most vulnerable ways because they know us so well. I wonder if it's just a misconstrued like he's going too far in what he's trying to do in terms of like, hey, I'm your buddy, I know this about you, type thing. um and maybe that's worth a discussion with him of like, hey, when you bring that up, and maybe you don't want to do this, but I'm saying like you might say like, hey, when you bring that up, I get uncomfortable. Could you refrain from doing that in the future? Could you not do that? Because I don't feel comfortable with it. And if he's a good friend, hopefully he would respond. And if he's a bad friend, he'll maybe do it worse, which is what I'm trying to avoid. Um, but yeah, I there's something to be said too about, I think it's partly how we bring it up to people, or where it's brought up to people, but also like the seriousness of the people we bring it up to. When I was in community college, I did reveal the fart fetish to some friends. I think because they were having a sexual conversation, and I probably had gotten sick of not being um I can't participate. I'm not that into penetrative and whatever regular sex, blowjobs and what have you, especially as people like in their 20s. Like I'm not like I wasn't like that kind of guy. So I couldn't relate to these conversations. I couldn't involve myself in these conversations, and I wasn't interested in faking it. Um so yeah, I think I told two friends, film friends, that I had a fetish, and at that time, I don't know how far it went, but I know a couple people were probably told about the fetish, just because at least one person didn't bring it up in a disrespectful way, but certainly brought up in like a tongue in cheek, like indication of them knowing, and just kind of like commenting um, about maybe being more discreetful. They said it more cleverly than I'm saying it, but that was an indication of them knowing, and not being one of the direct people I'd told. So that was, my what, mid, no, probably early 20s. If I was still in college, I hadn't, doesn't matter. Anyways, 20s. It was in my 30s. Yes. Yes. In my 30s, where I would be more selectively, before I started this podcast. I think actually I probably didn't tell anyone until I started this podcast. But by that point, I was kind of unimpeachable. Like at that point, I wanted people to know. Kind of what I said at the beginning of this episode was like, hey, this is Raj, the actor, doing this is his media project. Please like, subscribe, whatever. Maybe not subscribe, but please like. Please pay attention to what I'm doing, as any, person in this industry tends to want. And that was my answer. I'm like, I want to do something unique and creative and whatever, so I'll do this podcast. But anyways, the whole point I brought that up is a friend I uh, had met in my 30s, had found out about it, and he actually came on one of my video game live streams, and we talked about the fetish a little bit. Nothing too deep, nothing too crazy. We had some laughs about it, but it was a lot of fun. We're both on camera. I'm playing Halo or whatever. I think we switched whatever. I think we switched back and forth on playing. But yeah, it was an enjoyable time, and I think it really speaks to the difference of like, one, how it was presented to people. I think the first time with the friends in my 20s was more shame, like being shamed into it or feeling shame around it. And in my 30s, being like, fuck it, this is me. Like, if you can't embarrass me with this, because I am already quote unquote embarrassing myself by putting it out there. It's on my personal name Instagram. It's on whatever. My name's on the podcast, this and that. Like, you can't hurt me with something that I'm already putting out myself willingly. I'm so used to juvenile um insults of like, oh, you're this. It's like you're making fun of me with the thing I like. Oh, you like pizza or whatever, like that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I like pizza. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Um, I like, so it's kind of like that, but for adults. It's like, yeah, I like farts. Well, you can't just say like, oh, you're a fart fetishist. It's like, yeah, I've been doing a podcast for 4 years now. Like, you want to hear it? Like, sure, please do. So I understand both in terms of the people we tell, how we tell, and yeah, it's not, we can't control necessarily what happens after that, but the best we could do is hope we put our trust in the right people, and if we didn't, we can't let that, we can't beat ourselves up about that forever. Maybe we reassess some things with these people or with our relationships or what have you, but other than that, that's about all we can do. We just got to go forward, and hopefully share ourselves with people who are more understandable, people who understand, like, uh that we all have things. I think a lot of people uh have a sense of otherization of like, oh, they have a thing, but my things are normal. Like, it's like, that's goes it ties back into everything I say about my discontent for this world, is kind of the mainstream attitude that, um when I do it, it's right. When you do it, it's wrong. And it's surprisingly prevalent how much lack of empathy there is, um, in the world. And maybe that's media bias. Maybe if you go talk to these people directly, there is more empathy, but it's still kind of a scary place we live in terms of people being able to be like, put themselves in each other's shoes and be like, oh, I understand that experience. It's like, I think especially when it comes to a fetish like this, people are responding with disgust, and as if like a Bible beater or a very evangelical or very hardline Christian of like, no, what you're doing is evil, what you're blah 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 is evil, and it needs to be quashed from this world, rather than like allowing us all to have our human experience, our human follies, and our light and dark, our integrated egos and what have you. Like, yeah, the fact that speaks to a lot of my discontent in terms of the world in general, is the people's inability to see each other in each other, see each other with love, you know? Um yeah, that's a really, that's, I know I kind of got off in a bit of a tangent, but it really ties in for me of like, and that's why I emphasize on this show about finding humans rather than finding people, because people to me are constructs of society, and society's not good, not great. There's certainly aspects of society we enjoy, like cleanliness, indoor plumbing, this and that, but um yeah, that doesn't mean everything we did as a society or everything we think as a society is right. At least in my mind, I think there's a big, you use the word in a different context, but the big dehumanization aspect of everyone outside of ourselves, or for many people, everyone outside of themselves, to not think of themselves as the same, and that's a big. I mean, this podcast was never going to solve it, but in my most idealistic, I did think like, oh yeah, we're going to change minds, we're going to get people to empathize and care and whatever. And I think the reality is we'll find people who do that, and maybe we'll convince some people, but for the most part we'll just collect our empathetic and thoughtful and introspective people to have these discussions. And that's really what I enjoy about this kind of safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't blame you at all for, like going on tangents or anything like that. Um to kind of bring it back to the I do have something, I do have things to say in response to like to that, but like um going back to the whole thing of like telling people about your fetish is. I I feel like there's almost this idea of like commitment. And what I mean by that is like, okay, you either like keep it to yourself, don't tell a soul other than maybe like people who already very much have this fetish and have really, or just like any fetishes, people who are like is like a big like activist of it or whatever, things like that. Places where you're like, okay, I'm like 100% I'm like 99% sure this is safe. Or it's kind of the opposite end where you're just like, yeah, I'm just open about it. Anyone that wants to know what I'm into can just find it. Just gonna tell all my friends, gonna tell my family or whatever. And maybe it's not, maybe you don't have to tell everybody, but it's like it's kind of that certain thing. It's kind of like a deal of like, you know, telling telling your brother, but not telling your parents and whoever else. Or it's like telling one friend in the friend group, but not anyone else. It kind of puts it in this situation where it's like there's kind of this pressure on the person you told to be like, hey man, you kind of, it's almost like a fucking secret superhero identity where it's like, hey man, I'm I'm part of the Justice League, but you can't tell my friends. Like you can't tell them. It almost like puts the, that was a ridiculous analogy, but it's kind
No,
of
no.
like this thing of like it's kind of like this pressure on them. It's like there's like this thing I know about this person and I'm the only one. It's like I can't bring it up. It's like I know this thing, but I can't say it. I have to keep it to myself for that person's privacy. And I'm not saying that like that you shouldn't be able to open up to just a specific friend that you trust. But like it's sort of that deal where it's like, well, if you can't just tell it to all your friends, are they really the best friends in the first place? If you can't tell it to all your family members, like and it's like there's so many complex like structures and families and friend groups and stuff like that that it's like I get it's not a catch-all, but there are definitely complications with just telling one person in a specific group about it and then just not, there are complications there. So I would consider that. I mean, it seems like with you, one of your solutions is eventually one of the solutions you eventually came to was like, fuck it. I'm just completely open about it. I'm just telling everyone it's on my social media. Everyone knows. Maybe not everybody knows, but everybody could know if they just check my.
That is the difference. I think that is the difference too. Like I maybe give off an indication that when I talk about being open, like I don't mean to imply like I went door to door to everyone that I know and
Yeah.
and like told them. But I approached telling people as like they have the ability to know now. Like I didn't sit down and tell my family. They can go look at my IMDb, or I'm sorry, IMDb. Well, they can look at my IMDb too, but they can look at my Instagram and see it there. Posted a trailer now. I've been posting quotes from episodes, like what I think is like, oh, introspective or invocative quote. Um, there's an Instagram for the fetish now specifically, but I still share the quotes as stories on my personal. So the ability for people to know I'm wearing the T-shirt, like basically, as it were. There's no T-shirt per se, but like I am wearing the podcast or the fetish as a banner or what have you for people to see if they want to see. Um, it's a different thing for sure than sitting someone down or mentioning it to someone, revealing it to someone, whatever the context is of that specific telling to the person. Because I have a lot of people that if I go off the 30 or whatever people that see the story, it's like, oh, all those people know. But do they? We don't know. Like they might have just opened it up and closed it or whatever. We don't know for sure how much of that they've absorbed, what they realize about it, how much they even are able to consume that information and have it like they could just look at that and like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like the words are English, but this doesn't make any sense. um like I understand that all makes sense. All because we're in a whole different world from many people, so I understand that people could just be like uh missing it. But the point is, like, it's out there. Like for me, I have put it in a way that is now marketed, as it were, or part of a marketing strategy, or whatever you want to say about what actors do when they post shit on social media. um it's all part of the brand of me now, as it were, or at least I want it to be. Per se, we'll see if I do want it to be, if ever it goes any further. But yeah, I think that's all. uh it's everything we talk about here, even the simplest of questions, I think have so much nuance. I think that's what has made this podcast and left this podcast so interesting. Is because a lot of these interviews are the same damn questions, but I don't think there's been one answer that's been exactly the same as someone else's answer on this show. And I think that's really great, because it really, in addition to learning about the fetish, which is important, people's perspective and takes on it, um the side mission, or the side bar, is humanization, is for people, fetishists and non-fetishists alike, to hear like, oh, that person likes video games, oh, they liked that cartoon, I remember watching that cartoon, or whatever. It's like, they are like me. It goes back to that empathy piece of like, if I can show people that we're just like you, which we are. I'm not saying that like I'm trying to trick people. Like, we are just like everyone else. We just have this interest that other people might take in different ways. I like feet, or I like some. I can't think of more vanilla things, but yeah, I like other aspects. I like being 69 or whatever. I guess like all these aspects that people just, they don't see them as different for themselves. They're just like, oh, this is me. Obviously, being the fetishist we are, we had to confront that question, because we're not like other people. We don't see mirrors for what we want in regular porn videos, or even regular movies, for the most part. I mean, uh, I don't know how many other, I'm sure there's other movies, but like, we saw like BDSM piss play in God, Billions. It was like it was the opening episode of an HBO TV show, and we got his wife pissing on him. It's like, there now, people who enjoy golden showers have something to be like, oh, see, this is normal, or this is accepted, if not normal. And I think that's why we have to confront these questions, because you're not going to turn on the TV for the most part and see some woman sitting on a guy's face and farting on him, and that's going to be seen as whatever. We're still marginalized. I think what is it? The Boys had a cake farting scene, and I like to mention the Eric Wareheim blonde redhead music video, which is apparently was inspired by the artwork of Namio Harukara, I think is how to pronounce that name. The Japanese artist who drew a lot of big bottom woman in face sitting or other very male compromising positions. Very, very famous. Most people are well aware. But yeah, I think that's it. Is like, we have to confront these questions, and it's the lack of empathy that people have, and the lack of realization of how we are just like them, despite what we enjoy sexually, that I'm, I was going to say trying to solve. I'm not going to be able to solve it, but that's my goal. I mean, that's certainly my goal, is to get as many people as I can reach to see like, hey, we do like farts, and we like being dominated, or some of us do, and that's okay. that we don't we also like video games, and we also like acting, or we also like going to the park and hiking and gardening and having our sustainable garden aspect or whatever. I'm trying to think of things I remember people talking about on this show. But yeah, it's that's as much as this is a show about talking about the fart fetish specifically, it's about people. It's about learning about the people and how they enjoy their sexuality, but how they enjoy their life as well with this fetish.
Yeah. And I do think the word nuance is just such an unbelievably important word. Like, I think my senior quote had something to do with like, there's nuance in everything, don't look at things in black and white. Just because I feel like that's such like an important thing. I haven't talked I haven't talked about this like here on this episode yet, but we had a conversation before. I was talking about how like I was like a star student kind of in my school, and just to kind of uh catch the viewers up. Basically when I was younger, uh um I was, a very gifted kid and things like that. I was really good at doing my assignments or whatever. And I was kind of under the assumption that like this very like black and white assumption, like if I get good grades, I get success. If I get good grades, I have good future. It's like that's what was drilled in my brain. And it's like, yeah, the teachers around me kind of were like, yeah, you're doing so great. And it's like I was passing tests or whatever. But as I grew, and especially it really peaked like during senior year, I kind of thought like, wow, I did all those assignments, I did everything I was told to do, but I don't feel smarter. I still feel inferior to my peers. I still look around and I see people who are like getting like relationships and stuff, and they're like living the life. They have more friends than me. They have all this stuff. So it's just like all this black and white thinking, I feel like is like such a trap. And it's like I think people look I think a lot of people can't really connect the dots on some things. So like for example, like someone who is very like vanilla in their sexual interest, which by the way, nothing wrong with that. I'm actually kind of like I don't think I've mentioned this, but I do like the vanilla stuff. And it's just like I know like on this podcast, like we talk about like fart fetishes and stuff like that. I do believe there is a distinction between fetish and kink. I think it's like fetish, like that's like your main thing. Like this is the thing that gets you going. And it's like kink is kind of like a side thing. Like it gets you going, but it's not necessary. But and if we're going that sense, I guess everything I have is kind of a kink rather than a fetish. I don't know. But it's kind of like, people will, look at someone with a fetish and they kind of equate it to like our entire personality. But if you think about it, it's like, hey, you have sexual interests. Is that your entire thing? Are you just walking around everywhere? If you're at a little kid's birthday party, are you thinking about fucking railing your wife? Like, is this a thing? But it's like people people don't connect those dots, and I think that's like when I see fetishists on the show, it's like I see a lot of open mindedness and stuff like that. And I think it's kind of like that. We kind of have to have that open mind to like not necessarily rationalize, I would say explain, just genuinely like explain these things because it's like otherwise it's like, man, they're like I'm wrong. It's like that's kind of the thing, it's kind of the mindset you might have if you don't open the mind, if you don't connect the dots like, hey, I may have this fetish, but I'm also still interested in all this other stuff. Whereas, like, if I tell people that I have this fetish, they might that might be the only thing they can focus on. for me. Well, like when they think about me or whatever. But I live this life. I know that that's wrong. But I just feel like a lot of people, if they don't live that life, then they're not gonna understand it. I would like to think that if they just critically used like their critical thinking skills or did some research, they would come to that conclusion. But it's an unfortunate thing, and sadly, a lot of us are really uh stubborn in our ways. Um, but yeah, uh, that's that's my thoughts on what you said.
No, that makes perfect sense. I agree with it 100%. I mean, I think that is the unfortunate reality, but it ties me into something. I It ties me back into one of the questions, and I'm curious your answer. Uh, what do you feel in your journey has helped you grow in terms of your thoughts around the fetish and sexuality and bring you to this place of understanding that you're talking about um with me about this topic and everything we've talked about so far.
Um, I think I think fetishism maybe has kind of helped me realize that like a lot of these things that I'm interested in, or like whether it be like music or like very niche like forms of entertainment, whether it be sexual or non-sexual, it's like these aren't things I necessarily chose. It's not like this is a thing that I have to live by, like this was like the right decision or anything. It's just kind of a thing that happens, and I think I can kind of observe that in other people when it comes to subjective media. Like they could really enjoy a show that I personally find to be like objectively bad, and I've kind of struggled with that, of like that sort of thing. It's like I think this show is ass. Why do you love it so much? And I think it's like, yeah, we could talk about the objective, aspects of a show or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's like there are automatic things in our brain, whether it just be kind of like core values or just things we've picked up over the years. It's like that like lead to this sort of conclusion. And as long as something, even if you don't understand it, I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, is that like you do not have to understand everything. You do not have to have an explanation for absolutely everything. I think some people, you know, like adopt like maybe something like moves in your house, like, oh, you see like a cup move and people are like, oh, it's a ghost, obviously. It's like they create like these supernatural things to like kind of explain these, because they have, it's like they have to just wrap their head around it. But like I don't think a lot of people are comfortable with the idea of just like, you know what, I don't know why that happened, but I think, nothing bad came of it. It's not like the mug fell on the shattered on the floor or anything. There's no cause of concern. Maybe it's just like, maybe it was just a little bit of wind or something like that. It's like you don't. So I think it's really, I think it's made me more open minded and kind of more comfortable with the idea that, hey, it's like, even if I don't agree with you, even if I don't understand why you like the things you do, or understand, things like that, it's just, it's harmless. And just because the real takeaway is that just because I don't know the reason doesn't mean there is not a reason. You don't have to perceive a reason for it to be there. It's just you just don't know what it is, and that's perfectly okay.
Interesting perspective. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, there's definitely I'm certainly probably one who tries to intellectualize things too much. I don't go supernatural with it, but I might be like, oh, the condensation below the cup, whatever has caused it to do that floaty thing that I've seen before, or the wind or whatever. But yes, I do agree that there should. I think the best way to be is not necessarily to have to intellectualize everything, because I think that leads you to miss things. I think if you have to put an explanation on thing, you're not feeling things. You are explaining things, and there's a difference. Obviously, some people are more thinkers, and some people are feelers, but yeah, I think there's definitely uh, something to being able to embrace the moments as they come, and not necessarily have to uh, put a meaning behind it, put an understanding behind it. Um, so that makes sense. Um, in a similar, at least I see it as similar. Do you have an opinion that you had on fetish or sexuality that you feel like you've exercised, or that you got rid of, that you no longer think that? And if so, what made you change your mind about that?
Uh, well, actually, real quick before I answer that, I
Sure.
think what I said before about like the whole like cup thing, that was just kind of something like I kind of like thought on the fly. I think it's
Oh yeah.
still, serves its purpose, but I think the big thing is mainly like some people. I think it is important to analyze things and try to put reasons to something. I think it's important not to be obsessed about it, but I think some people they see that cup move and maybe there probably is like a legitimate reason for that, but some people will jump to supernatural activity. Like they won't even think about it in that way. They just throw in like the easy solution. I think that's the main thing to avoid is avoiding these like super easy solutions just to kind of feel like if there's going to be like an understanding of happenings, it should be like a genuine attempt, not just like the first thing you think of. I think that's mainly where I'm going with that.
Absolutely. No,
But
that
yeah,
yeah, it speaks to like a bias for sure. I agree. That would be like to like if you're a ghost hunter or whatever, stupid example, but like yeah, you might just immediately assume, oh, it's ghosts, or whatever. Like I totally get that.
yeah, um, yeah. So that was just some confirmation on that. Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, yeah. It do you have an opinion on fetish or sexuality, or both, that you used to hold that you no longer do?
um, nah, I don't really think so. In terms of like sexuality, that includes stuff like gay people and stuff like that,
Yeah, could be. I
right?
mean, whatever aspects of sexuality. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, in terms of sexuality, I feel like I've never been really close-minded about that stuff. In terms of like, gay dudes, like two guys in a relationship, or like gay women, like lesbians, I've I don't think I've ever had a problem with these concepts. I actually always thought that like, gay was like very like two dudes, getting together, I always thought that was like a really like cool thing because it's like I know this is kind of like a shallow reason. This isn't like my only reason I'm okay with gay people. I'm I'm perfectly fine, with it beyond this, but I think when I was kind of younger, maybe I saw that and I was like, "Hey, more women for the rest of us." That kind of like that kind of thing of it, and I just never had a problem with it. And in terms of lesbians, like you could say that it's like, well, you could apply that same logic of like, oh damn, that's two women off the table. But I was like, for me, a part of liking women is that like, oh yeah, just a woman on her own, that's really hot. But like two women, you take two of them and you put them together, that's like, wow, that's even hotter. Like sort of a deal. And I know those are kind of like silly sort of things. Obviously, beyond that, it's just like, yeah, just love whoever you love. Like it's all good and dandy, obviously. But like, yeah, I've just there's never been um a struggle in that regard, and there's not, and that's not downplaying people who have had their doubts. Like in you know with internet humor and stuff like that, is like I consider myself someone who's like grown up on the internet. There's a lot of jokes about like gay. It's a really big it's a really big joke even still. And it's like I can find those jokes uh pretty funny, but it's usually in like a context where it's like a guy who's like to give a more specific example, there's this channel called Game Grumps. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I'm familiar. Yes.
Extremely, yeah. So, like Danny and Aaron, and how it's like there's like this massive joke that like sometimes they'll like randomly sing songs, and a lot of the time like Aaron will joke about like sucking dick. And it's like obviously it's like very comedic, but it's not because, being gay is something to laugh at. It's because like he's literally married to a woman and he's like openly straight, but he's still like singing about sucking dick. So it's like kind of a thing of like it's kind of like the irony in a sense. It's not like, but actually I should have started with this, but I think more so like more sincere thing is that I've always been like, I like women. Why can't a woman like a woman? Or like, hey, I want it's like women or it's like women want guys. Why not a guy wanting a guy? It's just kind of a thing. I never really saw it of like that was always the thing. It's like, yeah, I can see that. It's like it's just a thing that never really like I never had a moment where that like short circuited my brain. Like, wait, guys, there are guys that want to kiss other guys? What the fuck? I've never, you know, had those moments, and I think that's a lot of people probably have, and that's perfectly valid. I would hope people would grow out of that mindset, or eventually did. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had any doubts in that regard.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds like you're from everything we've talked about before this, but also in general on this topic. Yeah, you have a lot more empathy than is maybe seen as normal, or not normal, but like seen in the mainstream is what I'm more trying to say. So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think also your generation is a little more um immersed in this. Obviously, gay people existed for far longer than my generation and the generations previous or whatever. But I think the between social media and everything else, there's definitely a lot more exposure than there ever has been. And I think that's good. I think that's been like positive in terms of people seeing the normalcy of this. There was just a oddly on this fetish specifically, there was just a Reddit thread about, isn't it weird how there's like an old generation of this fetish and a new generation of this fetish? And it's I read the question of like I don't know. I mean, it's kind of always been that way. I mean, yes, I mean, I think there's a reality where a lot of people, quote unquote, aged out of the fetish, or like, oh, I'm gonna get a real job, so I don't want to have any of my. I'm gonna delete all my content because I don't know why I'm doing this voice, but I'm gonna delete all my content so I can get a real job and not have anyone tie this back to me, or or maybe I found happiness with or without the fetish, and I'm just gonna go offline. But I think as kinks and this fetish in particular gets more as people realize like, oh, I can have a fart fetish, I can live my life with a fart fetish, I can be more open about it and tell the specific people that are important to me, or a partner, or whatever the case may be. um there's going to be more generations, quote unquote, that exist in this fetish. I'm one of them. I mean, I started writing uh fart erotica in 2005, and now it's 2025, and I'm hosting a fart fetish podcast, so I didn't go anywhere. um So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's going to become more and more prevalent as it goes, and that kind of ties into what's coming up to be my last question. What are your hopes or thoughts or both for the future of the fetish? And it doesn't have to. It could be for you. It could be for the fetish at large. It could be both. Whatever, however you want to answer that question is open to me.
So when it comes to people who don't really understand the fetish, I don't think actually let me say this first. I have high hopes for the fetish. I think fetishism in general is just getting more representation. I think, people are seeing this content more and stuff like that. Um, I think, you know, I think it makes perfect sense that someone who is generally vanilla, you know, hears of something about like a fart fetish and they kind of have this instinctual sort of like, oh, that's kind of gross. I never really I don't really blame people uh for that. I'm just uh kind of like fair enough. I think I think what really draws the line is like what really crosses the line is when people like literally go out of their way beyond just like that kind of knee jerk reaction to like shame people with fetishes or stuff like that. And I think like this is actually something I meant to bring up earlier, but I think it's still relevant of like fetishism. I think a big reason why fetishism can kind of get a bad rep is that there's a lot of like people online who maybe have fetishes. Like it's a big thing with feet in particular. It's like people with fetishes like being really creepy. Like they slide into a girl's DMs and they're like, "Hey, baby girl, let me see them toes," or something like that, or something like that. They're not like approaching it with any kind of like class or something along those lines. And I think that kind of gives us a bad rep because it's like people see those images and they think, "Oh, so fetishists must be like creepy," but it's like they kind of these people are creepy because they're being creepy. Like you could do that in like a vanilla sense too. It's like you could slide into a girl's DMs like, "Hey, how big are your titties?" Like no like asking them questions about their lives or anything like that. Just that's still creepy too, but it's like, you know, the ones with the ones with like people with fetishes being creepy or asking about that, it's like kind of worse in people's minds because it's like not only is that creepy, but now there's this focus on like the feet aspect, and it's like I think feet are gross, so it's like it just kind of snowballs. But like, yeah, I think in in an ideal world, it would be like we could kind of just say what our fetishes are to people. And it's not like necessarily a thing where they're like, "Oh yeah, man, you have a fart fetish. That's so awesome. That's so cool." And you're like so brave. It's not even a thing where it's like praise or whatever. Like, it's appreciated. Like sometimes it can kind of come off as like really glazing because I feel like I don't think like being a fetishist is necessarily like greater than being someone who's vanilla. I just think it's sort of a thing where it's like it would be nice to just kind of say it and people are like, okay, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can just kind of be people. It doesn't have to be a thing where like everybody has to be down to like role play it. It doesn't have to be a thing where like we get our own fucking month or anything. It's just like just a thing where we can comfortably say it and just comfortably say it without people like sending us messages of like, "Wow, you're so gross." I mean, that's pretty much always gonna happen. I I feel like, but just maybe like not to the extent of where it affects like fucking job opportunities or like our fucking friends just saying peace out. Like at the very least, not to that level of extremity, just being able to say it and just still being a person. That's all I need. I don't need to be like some sort of great brave figure, just a person. That's the bare minimum, I would say. Or well, I guess the maximum. I don't know. Just that's what I want.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. You touched on something that's very I think why this show is so, I'll use the word sterile. Why, I don't embrace any kind of like tongue in cheek or anyone farting on the podcast or any kind of like thing, because we have to be above reproach in many ways to be taken seriously. If this podcast opened up with like a fart intro or like some kind of fart song or whatever, like maybe it'd be more popular in some ways, to maybe the wrong people. But yeah, it's kind of exactly that. It's like the people who comment or even worse slide into DMs in like horny and really in dehumanizing. Let's just go there that far. Dehumanizing ways where you don't see the person as a person, you see them as a kink dispenser more or less. Um, yeah, that's fucked up. And that's what we're fighting against. That's why this podcast in some ways came about. One was the response to the Griffith study, and the other side, or another side of it, was like, fuck these horny commenters. Not, whatever, they're thinking with their penis and whatever. So I guess let them be. But like that's painting us all with a very bad brush. So how do I be the opposite of that? And this was that podcast, or that was this podcast, in response to that. So I agree with you. Like we someone can be vanilla and horny and not ruin the reputation of all vanilla people, and yet we don't have that luxury. That's why I come out so hard or sternly against that kind of stuff, and why this podcast exists in the form it does, because we have to be better than even we, it's not maybe as natural to be this way. I want to be like more quirky and whatever, but I this show's not the place for it, because I want people, especially any vanilla people or people outside the fetish, to listen to this and be like, oh, those are just interesting people talking about something that maybe I don't relate to, but I appreciate the passion and the vulnerability in which they share it with, which is the hope, which goes back to that empathy piece of people seeing us, um, you know as another human being in this world, um which that really, like, it really makes me appreciative for you coming on and talking about your experience with me, and sharing some of your greater thoughts about the fetish and life and people and what have you. I think it's been a very enjoyable conversation on my end. Is there anything you'd like to close with before I end this episode?
uh sure. Um I guess I would just like to say another thing with like art related stuff, like just because there are contexts where it makes us horny or things like that, it doesn't mean that like, you know, doesn't mean that we can't find humor in farts. Or maybe I shouldn't say we, I'll just speak from personal experience here. Like, I mentioned the Game Grumps before. Like, just because, I'm attracted to women farting or whatever, it doesn't mean that when they make fart jokes, it's like I feel this weird sensation or whatever. There's still it's not always just like a horny thing. Just like how, I like women's breasts, but they can be like they can have comedic value too in certain places. And I think also another thing I'll say is you know, it's good to feel, secure with your feelings or whatever. And it's good to like wear it, kind of wear it with pride. But I would something I would personally avoid is like any sense of like feeling like you're superior in a way, because I feel like that can be a dangerous trend with like certain movements, is like a feeling of superiority, because with things like supremacy or whatever, it's like that's kind of like what started it all. And it's like we're kind of swinging the pendulum of like, oh, everybody hates fetishists. Well, we're gonna swing the pendulum to where all fetishists, it's like us against the world, when in reality it should be a sort of thing, a- at least in my opinion, where it's more like a coexistence thing, where we all have these valid things. Vanilla is valid, fetish is valid, men are valid, women are valid, you know, blah blah blah. Anything of the sort. So uh be be comfortable with yourself and be content, but don't let that transform into hatred, or at least not like unnecessary hatred, because like, I'm it's like I'm not a fan of the education system or whatever, but that doesn't mean I still had good teachers and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm letting it, you know, consume me with hatred or anything, but just, be content with yourself, be happy with what you are, but don't let it transform you into someone who just wants to see the world burn. And I'd say that's my advice. I'd like to leave everyone off with.
Yeah, that's great. I think a sense of talking away from nihilism is a great and nihilism and hatred actually. But yes, I think that's great. That's a great way to leave people off. And Trent, honestly, I cannot thank you enough for being part of the podcast today.
No, absolutely. It's been a wonderful opportunity. I'm glad I reached out to you. Even just talking about my fetishes and kinks, and just the idea that something that maybe, possibly has brought me shame before could possibly be something that empowers other people, or something like that. Like, just that idea is great. So I'm really glad that we did this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome to hear.